television courtroom had never witnessed such a moment of pure unfiltered teenage arrogance. Meeting its absolute destruction, Madison Harper, a 17-year-old TikTok influencer with 340,000 followers who thought her social media clout made her untouchable, stood in Judge Judy's courtroom with her phone clutched in one hand and a kind of smug superiority that could only come from someone who had never faced real consequences for anything in her entire life. Her perfectly manicured finger was already reaching to record what she thought would be her next viral moment, as the words that would destroy her future forever began forming on her glossed lips. Whatever, boomer, you're like totally clueless about how the real world works. The silence that followed was nuclear. Every single person in that courtroom felt the atmosphere shift from professional legal proceedings to something far more dangerous, something that would be replayed 150 million times across every social media platform imaginable. Judge Judy's eyes narrowed into the kind of death stare that had made seasoned attorneys with decades of experience break down on national television. But what happened next would cost Madison Harper $12,000 in immediate damages, destroy her entire social media career overnight, get her expelled from school to weeks before graduation, and trigger a criminal investigation that would expose her entire family's fraud scheme, spanning 3 years and 15 innocent victims. But here's what makes this absolutely insane. Madison didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed on national television in front of millions of viewers. What Judge Judy did to her in the next few minutes was so devastatingly brutal, so righteously furious, so legally precise that it became the most viral courtroom moment in Gen Z demographics. Shared over 120 million times with the #boomer backfire trending for 6 consecutive days across every platform. We're talking about a teenager who walked into that courtroom thinking she was about to create content for her followers, thinking she would expose Judge Judy as just another out-of-touch boomer who didn't understand modern culture, only to discover that Judge Judy had spent the previous night uncovering a pattern of fraud and extortion so extensive it would trigger federal investigations and destroy everything Madison had built on lies and manipulation. The case seemed simple enough on the surface. Just a dispute between a teenage influencer and a small bakery owner over what Madison claimed was discrimination. But what the audience didn't know, what Madison herself didn't realize until it was far too late, was that Judge Judy had already identified 23 lies in Madison's initial paperwork, had forensic analysis of her edited videos showing exactly how she manipulated footage, and had testimony from 6 previous victims who had been too afraid or too broke to fight back against this teenage extortion artist. Before we show you the exact moment when this entitled teenager called America's most feared television judge a clueless boomer and instantly regretted every single life choice that brought her to that courtroom, make sure you hit that like button right now if you believe that Gen Z needs to learn that respect has absolutely no age limit and that real consequences still exist even in the social media age. Subscribe so you never miss these explosive torture moments where entitled teens, what think their follower count makes them special, finally meet someone who won't tolerate their behavior and isn't afraid to teach them lessons their parents should have taught them years ago. Trust me, what you're about to witness in the next 20 minutes will restore your faith that justice still matters, that karma is real and has perfect timing, and that Judge Judy is still the undisputed queen of destroying people who think they're smarter than everyone else. Madison Harper had never wanted to be in a real courtroom. After 3 years of destroying small businesses with edited videos and fake discrimination claims, she had gotten away with everything by targeting vulnerable immigrants who couldn't have to fight back, by using her age as a shield, and by having wealthy parents who made her problems disappear with money and legal threats. She had collected $67,000 through extortion, built a social media empire that generated $8,000 per month, and convinced herself that she was untouchable because the system was designed to protect people like her. She walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that Tuesday morning wearing ripped jeans and a crop top, deliberately violating every courtroom dress code with her phone ready to record, and her 340,000 TikTok followers waiting for her next viral moment. She had posted Instagram stories night before bragging about how she was going to teach this boomer judge how Gen Z does justice. She had practiced her victim performance for weeks. She genuinely believed this would be just another authority figure she could bulldoze with social justice buzzwords and fake tears. She had absolutely no idea that she was walking into an ambush that Judge Judy had been preparing since the moment this case landed on her desk. What Madison didn't know was that Sarah Chin, the 28-year-old bakery owner sitting across from her in that courtroom, represented everything Madison claimed to support but actually despised. Sarah was a first-generation American whose parents had immigrated from Taiwan with almost nothing, speaking barely any English and working minimum-wage jobs to give their daughter opportunities they never had. Sarah had worked 3 jobs while putting herself through community college, studying business management during the day and cleaning office buildings at night. She had saved every single dollar for 6 years, living in a tiny studio apartment and eating ramen most nights to accumulate the $70 she needed for down payment on her bakery space. Sweet Dreams Bakery had been Sarah's entire life for the past 3 years. She arrived every morning at 4 a.m. to start baking, stayed until 8 p.m. to handle the books, and offered free baking classes every Saturday morning to underprivileged kids in the neighborhood. She had built something beautiful through pure hard work and integrity, earning a 4.8-star rating across every review platform. With hundreds of customers praising her creativity and kindness, she was living proof that the American dream still existed, and Madison Harper had nearly destroyed it all in 72 hours with one edited video, and an army of followers who didn't care about the truth. The incident that brought them to Judge Judy's courtroom had started 3 months earlier when Madison walked into Sweet Dreams Bakery with 2 friends and demanded that Sarah make her a custom cake for free in exchange for exposure rate of her 340,000 TikTok followers. When Sarah politely declined, explaining that had a policy against free products for social media promotion, but offered a 10% discount for honest reviews from paying customers. Madison had exploded with accusations of age discrimination. She had screamed about toxic business practices and discriminatory behavior, despite Sarah treating her exactly the same way she treated every other customer who asked for free products. Madison's friends had recorded the entire confrontation from multiple angles, while Madison performed for the cameras, hitting all her buzzwords about ageism and oppression and everything wrong with small business owners. When Sarah finally asked Madison to leave after 19 minutes of disruption, Madison had issued her threat with a smile that made it clear this wasn't her first time destroying someone's livelihood. "You're going to regret this. I'm going to make sure everyone knows how toxic you are." Within 3 hours, Madison had posted her mercifully edited video that cut 19 minutes down to 4 minutes, showing only Sarah looking frustrated, and a scheme to leave with all context about Madison's demands, threats, and performance completely removed. The caption read, "Racist bakery owner attacks me for requesting service." Even though race had never been mentioned during the actual confrontation, the video went viral immediately, hitting 500,000 views in 6 hours and eventually reaching to 0.3 million views, as Madison's followers mobilized to destroy Sarah's business. Sweet Dreams Bakery's Google reviews dropped from 4.8 stars to 2.1 stars overnight, with over 300 star views from people who had never even visited the bakery. Sarah's Instagram was flooded with death threats. Some even spray-painted the word Karen across her storefront window. Protesters showed up outside her business with signs claiming she discriminated against young people. Her regular customers stopped coming, afraid of the harassment or believing Madison's lies. Her custom orders were canceled. Her revenue dropped 60% in only a week. Sarah couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, had panic attacks every morning, and watched 3 years of hard work crumble because of one teenager's lies. That's when Madison had sent her private message offering to make it all go away for $15,000. The same extortion tactic she had successfully used on 14 previous victims who had been too exhausted or too broke to fight back. But Sarah Chin was different. She had saved unit security camera footage from her bakery, showing the entire 19-minute confrontation, including every demand Madison made, every threat she issued, every moment of her calculated performance. Instead of paying Madison's extortion demand, Sarah had spent the last of her savings hiring an attorney and filing a lawsuit for defamation, harassment, and loss of business. That lawsuit had somehow made its way to Judge Judy's courtroom, and Sarah sat there now clutching a folder full of evidence, trembling with a mixture of hope and terror, praying that someone would finally hold Madison accountable for destroying innocent people's lives. Madison had walked into the courtroom like a celebrity making a grand entrance, waving to her supporters in the audience who had shown up to cheer her on. She had tried to record her arrival until the babe confiscated her phone, which earned him an exaggerated eye roll and a comment about First Amendment violations. That proved she understood nothing about how courtrooms actually worked. She wore her disrespectful outfit like armor, convinced that her carefully cultivated image of teenage rebellion would play well with the cameras. She had brought a leather portfolio full of printouts from random legal websites that she believed proved her case, along with screenshots of her viral video and comments from her followers. As if social media somehow constituted legal evidence, she shot confident glances at the cameras positioned around the courtroom, already imagining the reaction videos and commentary channels that would cover her appearance, already composing the Instagram caption she would post about standing up to the system. Judge Judy had been watching this entire performance with the calm patience of a predator, studying its prey. She had been crushing entitled people since before Madison Harper was born. In her 40 years of legal experience, she had handled over 20,000 cases and developed an almost supernatural ability to spot liars, scammers, and sociopaths within the first 30 seconds of meeting them. Madison had triggered every single one of her alarm bells the moment she strutted through the courtroom doors with that smug expression and that deliberately disrespectful attitude. Judge Judy had seen the type before. Privileged teenagers who had never been told no, who thought rules were suggestions that didn't apply to them, who used social justice language as a weapon while having no actual principles or integrity. But Madison was special. She represented something more dangerous than typical teenage entitlement. She was a digital native who had figured out how to weaponize cancel culture and social media algorithms to destroy innocent people for profit, as she had been getting away with it because the system hadn't caught up to her generation's methods of criminal behavior. What made this case particularly significant for Judge Judy was that she had spent the previous evening doing something she rarely did anymore, conducting her own independent investigation beyond the standard case file review. When her research team had initially flagged Madison's case as potentially interesting, Judge Judy had started digging deeper and discovered a pattern that went far beyond one teenage influencer having a dispute with Onesville business owner. She had found 14 other businesses across 3 states that had been targeted by Madison, using the exact same playbook. A coffee shop in Portland, whose owner had spent $8 settling with Madison after she claimed they discriminated against her for being young. A clothing boutique in Seattle had paid $12,000 to make Madison's harassment campaign stop. A family restaurant in San Francisco that had lost 30% of its revenue after Madison's viral video and eventually closed permanently. Each case followed the identical pattern of unreasonable demands, manufactured confrontations, carefully edited videos, review bombing, extortion attempts, and non-disclosure agreements that prevented victims from warning others. Judge Judy had contacted 6 of these previous victims personally, and their stories had made her blood boil with righteous fury at the systematic exploitation of vulnerable immigrants and small business owners. But Judge Judy had discovered something even more disturbing during her investigation. Madison's parents weren't innocent bystanders unaware of their daughter's criminal behavior. They were active participants in what amounted to a family fraud operation. Richard Harper, Madison's father, worked in commercial real estate acquisition and had been using his daughter's social media attacks strategically to damage businesses and properties his firm wanted to purchase at reduced prices. If there was a successful restaurant in a building that his company wanted to acquire and redevelop, Madison would suddenly discover that restaurant was toxic and problematic. Her viral videos would tank the business's revenue, their property value would drop, and Richard's firm would swoop in with a lowball offer. Stephanie Harper, Madison's mother, handled the legal infrastructure using attorneys from her real estate law firm to draft settlement agreements, create non-disclosure contracts, and threaten any victims who considered fighting back. The Harper family had turned their teenage daughter into a weapon of corporate warfare while generating over $67,000 in direct extortion payments that were being laundered through their business accounts to avoid taxes and detection. Judge Judy had referred her findings to the district attorney's office before this court session even began, but she wanted to expose Madison's fraud to the widest possible audience first. She wanted millions of people to see what this entitled teenager had been doing, to understand how social media could be weaponized for criminal purposes, and to witness the consequences when someone finally stood up to a bully who thought her age and her follow account made her untouchable. This wasn't just about one case or one verdict. This was about sending a message to an entire generation that the real world operates on facts and evidence and consequences, not likes and shares and trending hashtags. Judge Judy was about to deliver a masterclass in justice, and Madison Harper had no idea she was about to become the example that would be studied and shared for years to come. The courtroom atmosphere was electric with tension as Judge Judy prepared to begin the proceedings. On one side of the gallery sat Madison's supporters, mostly teenagers and young adults who followed her on social media and genuinely believed she was a social justice warrior standing up against discrimination. They had their phones out ready to record, wearing t-shirts with Madison's merch designs, whispering excitedly about how their hero was going to destroy this out-of-ouch judge. On the other side sat Sarah's community, immigrant families who had rallied around their friend, small business owners who understood the vulnerability Sarah faced, and a few of Madison's previous victims who had traveled specifically to watch her finally face accountability. The tension between the two groups was so thick you could cut it with a knife, and the bailiff had already positioned himself strategically to intervene if things got heated. Judge Judy opened her folder and looked directly at Madison with an expression that gave away nothing. The judge had perfected this neutral mask over decades on the bench, the ability to appear completely calm while internally preparing to demolish someone's entire worldview. She began with her standard opening, her voice cutting through the courtroom with the kind of authority that made people instinctively sit up straighter. Miss Harper, you are being sued by Miss Chin for defamation, harassment, and damages to her business stemming from a video you posted on social media. Before we hear from Miss Chin, I want to hear your version of what happened. Tell me in your own words why you believe you're in the right here. Madison's response was everything Judge Judy had expected and worse. Instead of simply answering the question with facts, Madison launched into a theatrical performance that would have made Broadway actors cringe with embarrassment. She began with an exaggerated sigh, the kind reserved for dealing with incompetent customer service representatives, and said in a tone dripping with condescension, "Okay, so basically what happened was I went into her bakery just trying to support a small business and offer her an amazing opportunity. Like, I have 340,000 followers who trust my recommendations, and I was literally offering her thousands of dollars worth of free advertising. But instead of being grateful, she got super aggressive and hostile toward me just because I'm young." She started speaking in a deliberately slow, overly simplified manner, as if explaining something to a child. "Your Honor, this is a classic example of ageism and discrimination against Gen Z. We face this kind of toxic behavior constantly from older generations who don't understand how modern marketing and social media work." Judge Judy's eyebrows raised slightly, the first warning sign that experienced Sevier's knew me trouble was brewing. "Miss Harper," she interrupted, her tone still professional, but with an edge sharp enough to cut glass. "I didn't ask for your analysis of generational differences or your theories about marketing. I asked what specifically happened in that bakery. What did you say to Miss Chen, and what did she say to you?" The audience could feel the shift in energy, that moment of electricity in the air right before lightning strikes. But Madison, blinded by her own arrogance and completely misreading the room, doubled down on her disrespect. She let out another exaggerated sigh and rolled her eyes dramatically before responding. "Okay, fine. I walked in and asked if she would make me a custom cake in exchange for promotion on my platform. She refused, which like whatever. But then she got really rude about it and started talking down to me, like I was some kind of criminal just for making a business proposal." Judge Judy leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving Madison's face. "And when you say she got rude, what specifically did she say that you considered rude?" Madison shifted in her chair, clearly uncomfortable, being pressed for actual details instead of being allowed to make vague accusations. She had this tone, and she was basically saying that my followers don't matter and that I wasn't a real customer. It was super disrespectful and honestly kind of triggering. She made me feel unsafe in that space. Judge Judy's expression remained neutral, but anyone who knew her could see the storm building behind those eyes. "Did Miss Chin use any specific words that threatened you or made you feel unsafe? Did she raise her voice at you? Did she touch you or make any physical gestures toward you?" Madison hesitated, realizing that she couldn't actually provide concrete samples without admitting she was lying. Well, not exactly, but it was her energy and her vibe. She was definitely being aggressive, even if she didn't say specific words. You can tell when someone is discriminating against you based on their whole demeanor and attitude. That's when Judge Judy decided to spring her first trap. Miss Harper. In Javi, the security camera footage from Miss Chen's bakery showing the entire 19-minute interaction between you two. Would you like to revise your statement before I show that footage to the court? The color drained from Madison's face as realization hit her that Judge Judy had actual evidence, not just the edited version Madison had posted online. Her confident posture collapsed slightly as she stammered. The video shows what happened. Judge Judy's voice turned ice cold. Yes, it does. It shows you demanding free products. It shows you becoming increasingly hostile when Miss Chen politely declined your request. It shows you accusing her of discrimination despite her treating you exactly the same way. She treats every customer who asks for free merchandise. It shows you threatening to destroy her business on social media. And most importantly, it shows you performing for your friends' cameras, deliberately creating confrontational content for your social media channels. Would you like to explain why the video you posted online was edited to remove all of that context? Madison's supporters in the gallery began shifting uncomfortably as they realized their hero might not be telling the truth. Madison herself was visibly panicking now, her carefully rehearsed victim performance crumbling under the weight of actual evidence. Everyone edits their videos. That's normal content creation. You have to make things entertaining and watchable. I wasn't trying to lie about anything. Judge Judy's response was swift and merciless. You weren't trying to entertain Miss Harper. You were trying to destroy Miss Chen's business so you could extort money from her. And you've done this before, haven't you? Madison's eyes went wide with shock. What? No, I don't know what you're talking about. Judge Judy opened another folder. This one much thicker than the first. Let me refresh your memory. Coffee shop in Portland. Owner paid you $8,000 after you posted a similar video. Clothing boutique in Seattle, $12,000. Restaurant in San Francisco that closed it permanently after your harassment campaign. Should I continue? I have documentation of 14 separate businesses you've targeted using this exact same pattern. Over the past 3 years, the courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs as the full scope of Madison's fraud began to emerge. Her supporters looked stunned, some of them already pulling out their phones to start distancing themselves from her on social media. Madison's face had gone from pale to absolutely ashen as she realized Judge Judy had connected all the dots she thought she covered. That's those different situations. Those businesses actually did discriminate against me. Judge Judy's laugh was cold and humorless. Really? All 14 businesses discriminated against you in exactly the same way. They all refused your demands for free products, and then you all posted edited videos. And they all paid you money to make your harassment campaign stop. That's quite a coincidence, Miss Harper. Or perhaps, and I think this is more likely, you're a calculating predator who has been systematically targeting vulnerable small business owners, mostly immigrants, who you knew would be too afraid or too broke to fight back against your extortion schemes. Madison tried to regain her composure, falling back on the victim persona that had always worked before. Your Honor, I really feel like you're being hostile toward me right now. I came here expecting a fair hearing, and instead you're attacking me and questioning my character. This feels really uncomfortable and honestly kind of like you have bias against young people. The audience couldn't believe what they were witnessing. This teenager was actually trying to play the victim card on Judge Judy, accusing one of the most respected judges in television history of bias and unfairness. It was like watching someone bring a plastic knife to a gunfight. Judge Judy's response was the moment that would be replayed 150 million times across every platform. She stood up from her bench, something she almost never did, and her voice carried the weight of 4 decades of judicial authority. Miss Harper, I'm going to give you one opportunity to show some respect in my courtroom. You are not on TikTok right now. You are not performing for your followers. You are in a court of law where your lies and manipulations have real consequences. Now, sit down, be quiet, and let me finish. But Madison, in the biggest mistake of her 17-year-old life, decided to double down on her disrespect. She stood up from her chair, crossed her arms, and said the words that would destroy her entire future. Whatever, boomer, you're like totally clueless about how the real world works. Maybe if you understood social media and modern culture, you get it. But you're just another old person who doesn't understand my generation. This is literally why nobody respects boomers anymore. You're out of touch and irrelevant. She turned to the camera and added with a smirk, this is going to be so viral. Thanks for the content, Judge Karen, The silence that followed was absolutely nuclear. Even Madison's most devoted supporters in the audience looked horrified at what they had just witnessed. Sarah Chin sat frozen in shock that someone could actually be this disrespectful to a judge. The bailiff took a step forward, ready to intervene if needed. And Judge Judy transformed into something that looked like the physical embodiment of righteous fury, about to rain down justice on the most entitled teenager in America. Judge Judy's voice dropped to a deadly whisper that somehow carried more weight than if she had been shouting. You just made the biggest mistake of your young life, Miss Harper. Sit down right now before I hold you in contempt of court. Madison, finally realizing she had gone too far, sank back into her chair as tears began forming in her eyes. But Judge Judy was just getting started, and what happened next would become the most devastating judicial takedown in television history. Let's talk about the real world. Miss Harper, since you seem to think I don't understand it, the real world where fraud is a federal crime. The real world where extortion carries a prison sentence. The real world where defamation comes with serious financial penalties. The real world where your age doesn't protect you from consequence when you deliberately destroy innocent people's lives for profit. You wanted to lecture me about the real world? Allow him to educate you. Judge Judy pulled out document after document, each one representing another piece of evidence. In what had clearly been an exhaustive investigation, first, let's discuss the money. You've collected $67,000 through extortion over 3 years, targeting 15 different small businesses. You've generated approximately $8,000 per month through social media monetization of content created through fraud and harassment. That's $163,000 in total income that you have never reported to the IRS. Tax evasion, Miss Harper, is a federal crime? Madison tried to interrupt with a stammering defense about her parents handling her finances. But Judge Judy cut her off immediately. Oh, we'll get to your parents in a moment. They're facing their own set of criminal charges. Butte right now. We're talking about you and your systematic pattern of targeting vulnerable business owners who happen to owe immigrants, who happen to have limited resources to fight back, who happen to be exactly the type of people you claim to support with your social justice rhetoric, while you're actually exploiting them for money. The courtroom was absolutely silent, except for Judge Judy's voice, as she methodically dismantled every aspect of Madison's operation. Your father, Richard Harper, used your social media attacks to damage businesses and properties his real estate firm wanted to acquire at reduced prices. Your mother, Stephanie Harper, used attorneys from her law firm to drift your extortion agreements and threaten your victims into silence. This wasn't just a teenager making mistakes. This was an organized criminal enterprise using a minor as the public face while the parents orchestrated the financial crimes behind the scenes. I have referred this entire operation to the district attorney's office, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Internal Revenue Service. Your family is facing investigations for conspiracy, fraud, extortion, money laundering, and tax evasion across multiple jurisdictions. Madison was sobbing now, her mascara running down her face in dark streaks. Her carefully constructed image completely shattered. The teenager who had walked into the courtroom with supreme confidence was now a broken mess, begging for mercy. Please, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any of those things I said. I was just scared and defensive. Please don't do this, Tone. I'm just a kid. I made mistakes. Judge Judy's expression remained cold and unmoved. You're 17 years old, Miss Harper. Old enough to run a criminal enterprise. Old enough to deliberately destroy 15 businesses. Old enough to collect over $163,000 through fraud. You're old enough to commit crimes, which means you're old enough to face the consequences. You wanted to be treated like an adult with your social media empire and your business dealings. Congratulations, you're about to get exactly what you asked for. Then Judge Judy turned her attention to Sarah Chin, and her voice softened with genuine compassion. Miss Chin, I want you to know that what happened to you was not your fault. You did nothing wrong by enforcing your business policies. You did nothing wrong by refusing to be extorted. You did everything right by fighting back and seeking justice. This court finds in your favor on all counts. Miss Harper is ordered to pay you $12.00 in damages for loss of business revenue. She is ordered to post the unedited security footage from your bakery with a public apology, admitting that she lied in her original video. She is ordered to forfeit all revenue generated from her fraudulent social media content. which will be distributed among all her victims. And I am personally ensuring that every college she applied to receives a copy of today's proceedings, so they understand exactly what kind of person they would be admitting to Thyra institutions. The impact of Judge Judy's words hit Madison like physical blows. Her college dreams, her social media career, her financial security, everything she had built was crumbling in real time. But Judge Judy wasn't finished. She addressed the camera directly, speaking to the millions of viewers watching at home. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what happens when entitlement meets accountability. Miss Harper thought her age would protect her. She thought her follower count gave her power. She thought social justice and language would shield her from consequences. She was wrong on every count. This case should serve as a warning to every young person watching. The internet is not consequence-free. Your actions have real-world impacts. And when you deliberately hurt innocent people for profit, justice will eventually catch up with you, no matter how many followers you have or how well you perform victimhood. Judge Judy's final ruling was delivered with the cold satisfaction of justice perfectly served. Miss Harper, you came into my courtroom thinking you could manipulate me the way you manipulated everyone else. You thought calling me emotional and out of touch would intimidate me into backing down. Instead, you gave me the motivation to ensure that your fraud is exposed to the widest possible audience. Millions of people are watching this right now. Your face, your name, your pattern of criminal behavior will be shared across every platform. You will never be able to run this scam again. Your social media accounts will be banned. Your college applications will be rejected. Your family will face criminal prosecution. This is what happens when consequences finally catch up with people who think they're untouchable. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the stunned silence. Case dismissed. Get out of my courtroom within 2 hours. Off the episode airing. The clip of Madison calling Judge Judy a clueless boomer had exploded across every social media platform imaginable. The hashtag OKBoomer backfire reached 3.4 million tweets as users shared the video with comments about finally seeing an entitled teenager get what she deserved. TikTok was flooded with reaction videos from Gen Z creators condemning Madison and praising Judge Judy for holding her accountable. The phrase Judge Karen Thadmadison had used to mock Judge Judy became a rallying cry in the opposite direction, with millions of people celebrating the judge for destroying the real Karen in the court room. Facebook recorded 85 million views in the first 24 hours. Reddit discussions erupted across 15 different subreddits analyzing every moment of the confrontation. YouTube commentary channels created thousands of videos breaking down the case. Madison Harper had achieved the viral fame she always wanted, just not remotely in the way she had imagined. She became the poster child for everything wrong with influencer culture, a cautionary tale about the dangers of weaponizing social media for personal profit, and a permanent reminder that respect and accountability tear regardless of your age or follower count. If you believe Madison Harper got exactly what she deserved for her years of fraud and outrageous disrespect, smash that like button right now and comment justice served to show your support for small business owners like Sarah Chin who refuse to be victims.